listening to the Lovish Podcast, and I'm your host, Sita Hood, a licensed clinical social worker. Each week, I'm going to help you to develop the belief and strategy necessary to make an immediate impact on the world by deep diving into topics like mental wellness, faith, relationships, and love. I should mention before we hop into the show, this is not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed therapist. You ready? Let's get it! Hey, welcome back for another episode of the Lovish Podcast. It is your host, Sita Hood, vision architect and licensed therapist. For those that are listening on your favorite listening platform, this is going to be another video podcast. So head on over to my YouTube channel if you would much rather watch the video podcast of this episode. So I started to think about this concept of quitting and why we quit a while ago, right? It's been something that's been on my mind for quite some time because, as some of you may know, I am in the last phase of my doctorate, hashtag Dr. Hood loading. So sometime last year, the Holy Spirit encouraged me to start living out loud, to stop hiding and to bring you along for parts of my journey. And so part of bringing you along for part of my journey meant that I had to be more open about some of the things that I was going through, because part of living out loud is sharing pieces of your testimony and pieces of your heart. And some of those lessons are interwoven throughout life as we go through regular, schmegular, degular, everyday circumstances, right? And so with that in mind, I have been sharing about my journey to becoming Dr. Hood. And let me just say, it's been challenging, right? It's been challenging, but from day one, I knew that it was nothing I couldn't handle, right? Like, even though it was challenging, I'm like, girl, you know how to do this. You got this. You've written a book before. You can do this. I knew that, but still, when you're in it, it hits a little bit different, right? Now, I would be lying to you if I was to say that I did not want to give up several times on this journey. But as I'm nearing the end of this journey, you know, it seems like all these things keep popping up, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm in the last phase of the writing. I'm in this, and it's like, but hold on. No, you're not. First, you got to analyze your data. First, you got to discover the themes in your data. First, you got to do your presentation. You know, so there's all these little tiny pieces that come with the territory and go along with this process of becoming a doctor, but also that feel like barriers and blocks to my end goal. And so I've been thinking and reflecting for quite some time, what happens if I don't quit? And I want to pose the same question to you today. I'm going to link this in the show notes or underneath the YouTube video, but I was watching this reel, or I stumbled across this reel from Dr. India Logan, and I followed her for quite some time, and I think she has a highlight as well of her journey to becoming Dr. India Logan. And in this reel, when I say this reel ministered to me so powerfully, y'all, she was like, you do not have permission to give up. You do not have permission to quit. You do not have permission to rest in that regard, like to just set aside whatever the assignment you started on and decide that that's not for you. You don't have permission, because it was never just about you. It's about impacting the lives of people that you're meant to impact. And when you do a thing, it's going to hit different. And because it's going to hit different, you don't have permission to give up. It was so fire. I am going to leave the link for that in the notes. But when I heard this Instagram reel, it spoke so strongly to me, because I thought to myself, like, how often do we think we have permission to simply stop because something is hard, right? When you are birthing a baby, if you stop, you could literally die. So if we put this into perspective for birthing whatever baby that you're birthing in this season, if you stop pushing for that promotion, or you stop pushing to finish school, or you stop pushing to move to that new neighborhood, or you stop pushing to change the way that you view life, you die. And death might not look like a natural death, of course, but if you think about how you give up on something and then you look up, 10 years have passed since you breathed life into that dream. And you said to yourself, when you started off, when you decided, like, okay, I want to stop this, maybe I'll pick it back up in 5 years, but it's now been 15 years. It's now been 20 years. It's now been an entire decade, 2 decades have just gone by, passed you by, and you've given up. You've died at the spot that you were never meant to die at, only to rest. I was talking to somebody the other day who said they wonder what the difference is in them and in somebody else who generates a higher income or successfully completed this major life move. And I said the answer is simple. They try and they continue to try. When you don't want to try, when you're too afraid to step outside of your comfort zone, when you're not willing to be stretched and to grow, you're going to die in your current state. You're going to die in your current position. You're going to forever be striving for more, but never reaching that. And that's not being negative. It is just the reality of what we're talking about. Giving up is an excuse. Now, I know that's going to hurt your feelings, but it's the truth. Giving up is a way out because life is hard. I want to go back to that birthing example. Labor sucks. Okay. Like, we can't put that any type of cute way. Labor sucks. It absolutely sucks. Yes, there are beautiful parts of labor, but overall, the experience is not necessarily one that women look forward to bearing. Okay. Like, in the physical sense, no, you don't look forward to all the physical things that happen. Use your imagination in case you're listening to this episode with your kids nearby. But women do it every day, and they choose to do it every day, and they're overjoyed to do it every day. Why? Because the reward far outweighs the pain. The reward for what you want far outweighs the pain. Even if you gave it your all and you tried something and you're not where you want to be 3 to 5 years later, I guarantee you're still not going to be in the same spot as if you would have never tried. You're going to have made some sort of progress because there are lessons that you have to learn along your journey in order to keep pushing forward. So instead of letting fear keep us stuck, I wonder what would happen if we pushed past fear, if we leaned into fear. Because, hard truth here, a big reason you give up is because you're afraid. And I get it. It's normal to be afraid. I get it. I hear you. Trust me, I do. And honestly, if you weren't afraid, I'd say that maybe your moves might not be big enough, because the big leaps, the big rewards, when you take big leaps, you get big rewards. But those only come from pushing past the fear. You have massive amounts of fear that are present when the reward is even greater. But here's the thing. You can use fear as an excuse for your stagnation, or, you are where you are in life as a result of the choices that you made, right? And you can come to a realization about that. And, I want to be clear. I want to give a sidebar. That's not to say that life can't happen and things don't impact your ability to move forward, because absolutely we have to factor in trauma. We have to factor in all of these things that were done and the circumstances that are outside of our control. But ultimately, how you choose to respond to those things that happen to you is what matters. How you choose to go forward is what matters. That's where the real transformation happens. And before we keep going with this episode, I'm going to pause here and we're going to have a word from our sponsor for this episode. When are you going to stop pretending like you're Superwoman? Yes, I know you believe if you don't do it, it won't get done. Take a deep breath and pause with me for a moment here. You're doing too much. You know it and I know it. Let's stop pretending and get you some relief starting today. Do you set weekly wellness goals? If not, you've got to start. No more leaving yourself last on your to-do list. I want you to download Confident Bae App and start using the weekly wellness tracker now. It's 100% free to use and it comes with a digital journal to help you process thoughts and feelings on the go. You can even meet a tribe of like-minded women inside of Bae's Digital Cafe. I'm serious. Take off your cape, take a deep breath, and download the app at thepinkemerald.com/app or hit the link in the show notes. Okay, welcome back. Now you've had your breather. Now I need you to come back to our chat because this is an episode where we're doing some real talk. Right? So once you come to understand that you actually have the power to decide things for yourself, to choose who you want to be, to choose if you step into your purpose, to choose if you continue to push past fear, to choose to keep going, that's where the real transformation happens. But I want to ask you some questions. I want to ask you some questions that'll help us to tap into the fear that you've been cozying up to. Do you find yourself sitting back and wishing that you were as brave as fill in the blank? Let's just say Stephanie. Because it seems like things come effortlessly to Stephanie. Stephanie doesn't have to work hard for those things. Stephanie started off on a better path than me. Do you sit back and judge Stephanie for living her life openly, but secretly you find yourself wishing that you had the same boldness as Stephanie? Here's the question for real, for real. Why are you really afraid to say yes to you? What's the real reason that you keep quitting on you? It has nothing to do with Stephanie. It has nothing to do with how she started off in life. Nothing to do with those things, because even with those considerations in mind, you still have the power to choose a different life today, to make a different choice today. Now, I'm going to tell you why it's not fair to judge Stephanie or to compare yourself to Stephanie. Because I know these are some questions that you've had in your mind when you look at Stephanie's Instagram page. You're like, well, Stephanie got it made over here. I can't be like Stephanie. Stephanie just seems to always have content that hit. She get 87,000 likes per post. She got almost 1 million followers. But the truth of the matter is, as much as you see the output that Stephanie has, things did not come easy to her. When you pretend like they did come easy, you are minimizing her accomplishments. And not only are you minimizing her accomplishments, but you're cheating yourself. You are lifting Stephanie up on a pedestal and saying, she has the capacity and the ability to do this. I don't have that. When in reality, it's more like, here, there is a level playing field. You've got the same 24 hours that Stephanie does. And what's challenging for you, yes, it might be easy for her to overcome that and it may feel effortless, but she also has areas that she's struggling in that might be effortless for you. Do you see why all this inner thoughts and this inner dialogue is all honestly just crap? Right? It's all excuses and fear tactics and things to keep us stuck. Here's what I want to say to you. Bring it in close. You are just as brave as her. You do have a gift. You do have purpose. You are a woman of stature. You are a woman of influence. You do have value. You do have wisdom. You are valued. You do have purpose. Your life does matter. You are a world changer. But you have to believe that all of that is true. If you don't, then you won't act like all of that is true. And if you don't act like all of that is true, then it can't be true. So you have the power to push past fear and make those things a reality. And leaning into fear is scary. It's scary. But at some point, you're going to have to lean into that fear if you want to grow. And I'll tell you why. That fear is the solution you've been searching for. It's the solution you've been hunting for. Your life-changing answers are on the other side of your fear. Truthfully, the fear that you have been avoiding can either be the keys to your jail cell or the keys to your freedom. But you've got to decide what you're going to let fear do. How are you going to let fear impact your life? Is it going to be a motivator for pushing through to the things that you want and you need? Or are you going to let it be something that keeps you stagnant? A moment of truth. You ready? I know you're ready because you're still listening. I was terrified hosting my first 2 retreats. So the first one was a virtual retreat, and I felt literally sick to my stomach with worry and concern that I would fail or that something would happen and I wouldn't be good enough. Those were all the thoughts that were pedaling around in my head. And you know what the women said? They said that it was absolutely amazing. They said they had an amazing time. They loved every bit of the retreat and they wished that it was longer. And I said, okay, that went well, better than I expected. So then I decided to do another retreat in person the following year. For months leading up to the retreat, I was absolutely, positively terrified. Okay. Not a joke. I was literally terrified. And it wasn't something that I shared with a lot of people. It was just kind of like a me and God thing and maybe a couple of people that were close to me, but not even really that. There were a lot of things that could have gone wrong. Like I had booked Chrisette Michelle to come and to speak to the ladies. And one, that was a pretty big thing to do for this retreat and for this space. But it was special to me that she was there because Chrisette was the one that pushed me out of my comfort zone and encouraged me to host the retreat. So I thought to myself, it would be awesome if she could be at the retreat and speak to the ladies and pour into the ladies because she has a gift, right? So she encouraged me to be brave and step outside of my comfort zone and launch, but I was still terrified. I was still terrified that anything would go wrong. And you know what went wrong? You want me to tell you what went wrong? Absolutely nothing. The hotel was phenomenal. The retreat participants had so much fun. Again, they did not want the weekend to end. They really enjoyed meeting Chrisette, but more importantly, hearing her share her wisdom, and everything was absolutely flawless. I literally could not have executed or planned a better retreat. But the only reason I was able to do that was because of the behind the scenes fasting, behind the scenes praying, behind the scenes acknowledging that God could do whatever he felt was necessary in the retreat, behind the scenes continuously submitting my fears, my very real fears, my very large fears to God and being honest about that. Signing hotel contracts before people even bought tickets. Signing hotel contracts before people even bought tickets, right? So what I'm saying to you is everything you want is on the other side of your fear. If you know God, then the beauty is that he's right there with you and that you can ask him for help. You can submit your fears. You can submit your anxieties to him and he will help you to work through them. And then knowing that you have nothing to be afraid of if you're walking in obedience. I want to leave you with one question that I want you to take to your journal. What happens if you don't quit? All right. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Lovish Podcast. In this episode, we talked about how fear is a tactic. Fear can either be something that pushes you into your purpose and helps to accelerate your course, or it can be the keys to your jail cell. If you would like to catch this episode on YouTube, click the link in the show notes and head on over to my YouTube channel to watch the video podcast of this episode. Otherwise, that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed today's episode, share the love. Share it with your friends, share it with your mama, share it with your auntie, share it with your uncle, and then head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Reviews help the podcast to grow. All right, that's all I got for you today. I'll see you out in these social media streets.